I'm struggling to feel guided by leadership. I have found that more often than not, a lot of decisions are made to get a client to sign on the dotted line. This leads to questionable decisions that may not align with services, involve out of scope work, or exceed capacity. Whilst I've raised issues, made suggestions, or even held boundaries. However, I'm left with the feeling mentioned above, burned out and demotivated. My question is, how can I improve my ability to communicate the needs of my team and me, and in turn, advocate for them more effectively, or even grow to be a leader myself? Or am I to work on removing attachment to this? We often see the mentality of it's not that deep, but does that then impact my quality of work? There's a lot of context and a lot going on in this question.
Yeah. This is a really interesting question, and I think there's some context in this. I think that, you know, I'm, for the first time in my career, I'm sort of on the leadership team and exposed to the financials of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an incredibly challenging market at the moment in advertising. There's a lot of sort of market forces happening that make it challenging. So there's a lot of pressure on businesses to win work and to, you know, land clients and do what you need to do to ensure the business and people's jobs survive, essentially. So that's the kind of context, I think, as to why that this individual might be feeling that way, or you know, seeing that happening. And it can be really frustrating because that's not something that's in your control. You know, decisions like that are often made externally to the needs of the organization, or it's not necessarily consulted. They're not consulted. But I think just the question itself is all around, you know, how can you be that advocate for your team? How can you continue to beat that drum of, you know, their welfare? How can you be a leader yourself? And I think, yeah, it's sort of answered in the question. You know, I think when I talk to the people that I line manage, I often talk about your sort of personal brand. You know, the type of person that you are in an agency and what you stand for. There's a whole bunch of organizations and groups of people that meet externally to the workplace that you can connect with other people, you know, that are talking about mental health, that are talking about support for individual communities. I think it's really, really valuable to build your network outside of work, so that and I think it's around just being what you're known for. You know, what are your values? What are the things that you really believe in, that you want to fight for, that you want to talk about, that you want to be known for, and continually beating that drum, talking about it, regularly bringing those points to your leadership team will eventually make a change. You know, I do believe that, but I also do recognize that it can be incredibly frustrating for people, sort of on the receiving end of that, and seeing the impact of, you know, on other people's mental health, of like condensed timelines and added pressure. That's an incredibly stressful space to be.
Jocelyn, as part of this question, there was this kind of, should I work on removing attachment to this?
Yeah, that's so interesting, because to me that says, should I work on just sucking it up? Right? Like, and there's a part of me that's hearing a lot of like scarcity mindset, and I know the industry is doing it tough, and, you know, economically a lot of places are doing it tough, and therefore there is that squeeze. There is that, you know, be more productive, give more value, work harder, and there's a promise that it will get better, when actually I don't think it does, because if you've done that job on, you know, really in tight circumstances, it proves that it can be done and then becomes normalized. So I think there's really big questions as like the worker bees, sort of sitting behind that going, okay, so at what point do I have a boundary around my worth? And I guess, you know, it's going to lead into probably the next question about burnout, that I've done a lot of work more recently in sort of some provocative spaces around, you know, decolonization and really flipping the script on some of these things we have normalized. That, you know, is burnout actually more like exploitation? Like what would happen if we you know, substituted those words? So it is a very tricky one, because, you know, your job literally could be on the line if you're not willing to put in that hard work to win that client that then sustains the agency. And that's a real actual thing.
Yeah. I liked as well the point around like, I think there's an element around like removing attachment. Sometimes that's for your own good, right? Like, because if you end up resenting, then obviously that's really hard to deal with. But also the fact that like continuing to keep raising it, I agree, like, is a good thing, because it's just it's how it's received, and it can be received very differently at different times based on what's going on in the life of the person that you're talking to. So, if it's been and I think sometimes as well, it's easier to communicate those things when things are going better, because then that person's in the headspace to go, oh yeah, actually that's a good idea, versus the kind of, fight or flight space of, geez, I don't even know how we're going to pay everyone next week, and you want me to do all this stuff. So I think, yeah, there's some of those things are worth kind of bearing in mind as you do this, and I think worth keep chipping away at, because sometimes I know for me, someone will present an idea for me 5 times, and then I'll go back to them with an idea, and they go, oh yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about.
I think it's really important for people to protect themselves first, especially if you're in any kind of management role where you're looking after other people or thinking about other people. It's really important to protect your own mental health first and think about yourself first, in order that you are strong enough to be able to have those conversations and to keep beating that drum for other people. So I don't think it sort of sounds negative to sort of disengage, but if you do need to disengage or take a break from it to protect yourself, I think that's valuable.